Hi everyone, Nate here. Just a quick heads up that if you enjoy What a Hell of a Way to Die, you can access bonus content in which we publish a new episode every week on our Patreon. The link is in the show notes, and for $5 a month, you get access to all the bonus content we've put out since we started the show back in 2016. Hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening.
Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. You got me, and you got Nate. Nate and I already got all of our dad chatter out of the way yesterday, so I don't know what to ask you about today.
It's just another day. It's a funny aside about England. After dozens and dozens over the years of inquiries from the government about, the ways in which this country is structurally racist, the government's decided it's going to appoint a new commission, but the person heading it is a British Asian woman, which in Britain typically means South Asian people, whose name is Munira Mirza. And she basically writes for the equivalent of like the Federalist about how racism isn't real. And they've appointed her. Basically, she's like, she's written articles numerous times on record about like actually racism isn't real. And that's who they put in charge of the commission.
It sounds like getting Candace Owens to put up there. It's just like
100%. Yeah. Candace Owens might actually be a better comparison. I said that because of her history, it felt like having Munira Mirza doing this would be like having pre-prison sentence Dinesh D'Souza, but
or Michelle Malkin or something where you just
yeah. We know the type, but you know what I mean. Like there's in Britain, weirdly in America, like it's rare that right-wing radio figures wind up in senior government positions, but Britain is a government entirely governed by right-wing editorial boards, effectively. There was a headline yesterday that apparently Boris Johnson's advisors are encouraging him to declare a war on woke. Like, I'm not joking. This is the dumbest country, and this entire island deserves to sink beneath the waves, man. Like, easily the dumbest country on the planet.
Look, dude, I just saw Josh Hawley, my senator, say that defunding the police is a thinly veiled class war of the elites against the working class, and I'm just like, I can't even like.
I love working class cops who make $200,000 a year.
Yeah, and what better way to discuss the working class other than people who have the rights and the abilities to just fucking gun you down and not get in trouble for it. Like, let's be honest. If anybody ever acted like the way that any cop has acted in the last 3 weeks, we'd all get fired, right? Like, I don't understand how I can't work at like fucking Little Caesars or something and cuss out a customer. And I'll get fired, and I'm not making my $7 an hour job anymore. But like, I've been cussed out by so many cops, and nobody gives a shit. I need cops to be more like the guy who works the counter at Little Caesars. Be more polite and in deference to me. God damn it.
Yeah, well, I guess it's just one of those things where the cops are gonna be themselves, but they don't need some idiot like Josh Hawley to fucking defend them under the guise of working class concerns. And one of the things we want to talk about in this episode is particularly stuff confined to Louisville, because Louisville, Kentucky has had some of the most egregious abuses in recent memory, and relatively within the same season, effectively, like not in the same week or same month, I don't think, but within the same season, you could say. You had the murder of Breonna Taylor, and you had the shooting of David McAtee. And here's the thing, right? In the former case, the cops executed a no-knock warrant in plain clothes and shot up the residents of an apartment building and killed a woman because they suspected her boyfriend of drug trafficking, and he had no drugs and no ties to drug trafficking. His car had been parked in front of a house periodically that a guy who they thought was dealing drugs lived in. And they used that as a pretext to do a no-knock warrant, burst in their house at 2 a.m. in plain clothes. And her boyfriend rightly thought they were people who were robbing him, and he shot back. And so they, doused the entire house in bullets and wound up killing her in her bed. Of course, the police haven't. They have not launched an investigation. They haven't suspended any of the officers. They released a police report under pressure that was intentionally left blank. Like, everything about it screams contempt. And then following that, much like we were concerned about on this show, there was a shooting on June 1st in Louisville during protests in which a man who ran a barbecue spot named David McAtee was killed. And it turns out the person who killed him was not a police officer, but rather a National Guard soldier. However, we want to talk about Breonna Taylor first. And Francis, you've got some opinions on this. And I know we've talked previously before about the phenomenon of no-knock raids and the general insanity of that.
No-knock raids scare the shit out of me because I live in a mixed-income neighborhood, and I always have. I didn't know about no-knock raids really until I was probably a teenager or so. Because obviously it never actually happened to me, but it happened around me to people. And the thing is that the cops get it wrong a lot. Like, all it takes is for the person who's transcribing out the address to switch two numbers or something, or just like, I remember a guy in Kansas City getting no-knocked. He was a white guy who was no-knocked because his car had been seen in a hydroponic store because he homeschooled his kid, and he and his son were setting up hydroponic to, just do inside growing of tomatoes. So the cops bust into this guy's house and fucking ransack his shit in the middle of the night to steal all of his tomato plants. Like, and the thing, and the reason why it scares me to, the idea of these things scare me to death is because, like, this one goes beyond, I don't want to sound like an asshole, and I'm probably going to end up sounding like an asshole because I know I have a lot of white privilege. So I know a lot of this is just like me realizing that, it can happen to you kind of thing, like the no-knock warrant is you have, like, everything that you've been taught about how policing works and how defending yourself works goes right out the window because you can go to jail. Like, if there weren't protests, if there weren't, people being up in arms about Breonna Taylor right now, her boyfriend would probably go to jail for her murder, even though he didn't do anything, even though there wasn't any drugs in the house, even if there were fucking drugs in the house, even if the dude had like a bag of weed or something like that, or if he had some cocaine. Like, who gives a fuck? This is an insane thing to do, and whether the cops get it right, if they get the right house, or if the cops get it wrong, and they got some wrong house number. The idea of this, of just having your shit, your privacy invaded like that, is absolutely insane to me. And that there's no repercussions, there's no consequences. They'll fuck up your door and then bill you for a door. Like, they'll come in. I mean, what's the first thing that would happen in my house? They come into the front door and the dog would go at them, and then, cops love shooting dogs, so that's number one. That's the foreplay for them, is to shoot the dogs. And then, I don't know what. Like, I don't keep a gun in my bedroom. I do keep one of those big, like, Maglite flashlights, and probably come out with that swinging. And what's going to happen other than I'm going to get shot? You know what? You can announce yourself all you want, but at 2:00 in the fucking morning, am I hearing that? Of course not. I'm asleep. I might have a beer or two in me, so I might be in a deep sleep. But also, I just sleep heavy. And if I wake up to the dog barking and a gunshot, I'm not asking, like, oh, I wonder if that's the cops coming by to see it. No, of fucking course not. And nobody should. And, like, honestly, no-knock warrants, like, I mean, Louisville is passing legislation to not do them, and other places are passing legislation to stop doing it. But it's absolutely insane. And even in this Wikipedia article, Rand Paul introduced Justice for Breonna Taylor Act, which would prohibit federal law enforcement from carrying out a warrant, quote, until after the officer provides notice of his or her authority and purpose, end quote. That doesn't fucking mean anything. Like, that's just, they're going to knock on the door and they're going to say police at 2:00 in the morning. And again, if they do that at my front door, I'm not hearing that. So it's absolutely insane. It's basically a death sentence. Cops have thrown flashbangs at babies. Like, this is, and to think at any point in time that one, that this is an effective method of policing, but two, that like if you do this, if you are the cop that does this and shoots somebody and then searches the house and it's like comes up with nothing, like whether it's illegal activities or not, I cannot imagine being like, oh well, I mean, sucks, but we'll get them next time, fellas. Like, it's absolutely insane, and I cannot fathom any person in this world who would just say, yeah, that's normal, that's fine.
I mean, I keep thinking about this story, and I may have mentioned it before, but there was one in around the same time that the Ferguson protests took place. I'm pretty sure that this was in Missouri, but it might have been elsewhere in like the sort of, West Midwest region. And stop me if I've told this story before, but long story sort of summarized is that they did a no-knock raid on a guy because they said he was a weed dealer, and the drug dogs had fucking alerted them to the presence of weed in his trash. And it was literally because he was a guy who'd like buy an eighth at a time and smoke weed at his house. But they burst into his house, killed his dog, wrecked all his shit, and, arrested him for having a grinder.
Yep.
Like, and, they charged him with paraphernalia. And it's like, you basically did a SEAL Team 6 raid on a guy's house for a weed grinder.
You destroy a person.
Like, what the fuck is wrong? And you just ruined his life.
Yeah. That's a complete, like, look, we all lose.
Imagine having fucking kids and having to explain to them why the police burst into your house in the middle of the night and murdered your dog.
Yeah, because when you go to sleep, Dad smokes a little weed. Ain't nobody fucking doing that about the bottle of vodka in my basement.
And I realize that obviously like that's a minor concern compared to people getting fucking murdered. But like the reason I point this out is because like it's weird to me how this will happen. That a lot of folks who are iffy on the belief that maybe the police only exist to punish black people and enforce structural racism, they'll hear stories like Breonna Taylor's, and they'll be like, "Oh, that's fucked up." But then you're like, the police also do this to white people and they kill their dogs. You're like, "Holy shit, this has to stop." You know what I mean? Right. And I'm saying this, I'm like, listen, to folks who are not convinced, who might be on the fence about whether or not this is real, I'm telling you, yes, they kill people's dogs, and no, they don't face any penalties for it whatsoever. Typically, when they do kill your dog, they then charge you for like the bullets. They basically like, you inconvenienced an officer and required him to use his gun, therefore you're going to get a monetary charge for that while he killed your dog.
Cops love shooting dogs, man. I don't even know what it is. Like, I've come across like aggressive dogs before, and the thing, okay, Nate, the problem is that cops have guns. That's problem number one in a heartbeat is cops have guns, and the gun is the first thing they go for. And like, it took a long time to train them to be like, no, go for the other gun, which is a taser, and just electrocute them before you shoot them. Maybe like, I mean, it's an option. So if you don't want to just outright kill somebody and you want to see them jerk around on the ground a lot, we've got this taser that you can do. But, cops will just immediately pull a gun and shoot something because that's just the answer, like that's how, Philando Castile gets, shot in his own car, reaching for something that's not a gun, or maybe just, he even said,
they told him to undo his seatbelt, and when he reached to undo his seatbelt, they shot him.
Yeah. That's absolutely insane. You can be doing exactly what the cops tell you to do, and you will die, and nothing will happen to the cops. And I cannot fathom, and that's the thing. White people just don't see it happening to them. It doesn't happen in their neighborhoods, and when the Black Lives Matters protests started back up in earnest after Floyd was killed, there was just this like there's this groundswell from all the right wing chuds to be like, well, what about this white person? What about that white person? What about that white person? You guys throwing statistics at you, and it's like, why? But yes, you should care about those people. Like, this isn't necessarily just a cops killing black people. It is cops kill everybody. Cops are just shitheads. And yes, cops kill black people, and yes, Black Lives Matter. But like, yes, all of us should be concerned because, whether or not it happens to you, it happens to the people around you. You should give a fuck. Like, it's so hard to like convince people like, this is something you should care about, and not in a like, haha, somebody's dead and we love the cops. Like, you should care because cops are doing absolutely insane things. As much as you love to wave a rebel flag or the Gadsden "Don't Tread on Me" flag or whatever bullshit it is that, that makes you feel like, you know, I don't need no government, but then you will sit and celebrate government goons gunning people down over nothing, or just over weed, or over cocaine, or over just drugs, or it fucking doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. None of it deserves a death sentence. And the all you have to do is follow the law and do what the cops say only works when you are a middle-class white person. And even then, you're still like, I'm sorry, there's no person in this world who is driving down the road or walking somewhere and sees the lights and hears the whoop of a police car and doesn't have their heart jump. And there's a fucking reason for that. There's a fucking reason. If you are calm around the cops, that is an insane amount of privilege, like that I cannot even fathom. Because, you know, even my middle-class white ass grew up around abusive cops and saw cops be complete shitheads to me and my friends. What the fuck are you supposed to do? So, man, it's just fucked up. And the thing, you know, even the cops will say, you know, well, we did this, we did that. I can't trust a cop. I mean, I cannot trust the police. You can't trust prosecutors. And they're making it that they're doing that themselves. They're stepping on their own dicks at this point. And we've got hundreds of videos.
That's why the thing about the David McAtee shooting also gets me, because here's the story that they're trying to say is that David McAtee shot at police or shot in the air near police after they had begun firing less than lethal rounds at him, at protesters, at his barbecue stand. His niece was in the crowd. He was trying to protect her. They claim he shot at them, so they killed him. But the fact of the matter is, I don't believe the cops. Yep. I mean, at this point, I have zero reason to believe the cops. They absolutely have shown that they will lie in any fucking instance, and that nothing they say is true, and that they'll lie to their own bosses, you know, within city government to make statements on their behalf that are completely false and then not correct them. They do this all the time. So did he have a gun? I have no idea. And I don't believe the cops. Like, at this point, whenever you hear a narrative events, we're like, oh, well, they killed him because he had a gun and he was shooting. It's like, I don't believe you. Like, I'm sorry. I absolutely don't believe you, because you have demonstrated in every instance. I mean, if you look back in fucking Chicago at the Laquan McDonald case, that the cops made this whole fucking narrative, and the mayor at the time, Rahm Emanuel, spent millions of dollars fighting litigation to keep the body cam footage or the dash cam footage buried from what happened, because they're like, oh, well, he attacked an officer with a knife and they had to kill him. And legitimately, when they finally released the footage, what was revealed was, here's this kid walking down the street with a knife trying to cut cop car tires, and the cops tell him, get the fuck out of here, and wave a gun at him. He turns away to leave, you know, walk away from them, and then a cop shoots him 19 times. And like, Chicago literally spends, like, if you break it down, they spend more money settling lawsuits for police brutality than they do for like social services. It's unbelievable. And that's every cop. They all lie, and the entire system will fucking go literally to the fucking Supreme Court to fight any requirements for them to disclose information that's, you know, that might catch them in a lie.
And
prosecutors are involved, fucking DAs are involved, judges are involved, the state government, the city government. It's the thing. It's like, it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but it's like, how many fucking times do you have to see them blatantly lying to you before you think to yourself, maybe I shouldn't trust this shit cops say, you know, on its face.
And you know, it's the in Atlanta, the police officer that shot and killed a black man who was asleep in his car, I believe, had been fired 8 times from different police departments.
I don't know if that's the one in Atlanta, but there was a cop recently, yeah, who I think it was in Philly actually, or Pittsburgh. It was somewhere in Pennsylvania. He walked up to some kids sitting on a stoop and sprayed them with pepper spray. It was caught on video, and so he was, you know, facing an inquiry. And it turned out he had been fired for misconduct from 8 different departments. It was now on his 9th department.
I mean, this is the other thing. Like, there are so many. If you want to do cop legislation. And there's so many legislations that are very easy to do. If you get fired for discipline, for being a shithead cop, for disciplinary reasons, or for, you know, doing something like spraying a bunch of kids in the face, you don't get to be a cop anymore. No, you're blackballed. That's number one. How is that hard? Because that's all that ever happens to these cops. They get fired or they resign, and then they, go 3 counties over, and then suddenly they're a cop again. Hey, I've already got, you don't have to, it's cheaper. You don't have to send me through the academy. I have experience. I have this, that, and the other thing. And there's nothing stopping, 3 counties over from saying, yeah, okay, we need cops. We'll pay you this amount of money. And we don't care about, past transgressions. So it's like, that's number one. And then number two, very simple. If a cop ever uses their gun incorrectly, if they ever use their service weapon incorrectly, like, my wife, who knew a cop who pulled a gun on a parking lot attendant because the parking lot attendant said, you can't park here, and the cop said, I'm a cop, and pulled a gun and waved it at him and said, I'll do whatever the fuck I want. You don't get to be a cop anymore. Done. It's that easy. It's that fucking simple. But like, and these are things, honestly, that would improve things so quickly. And I mean, look, this is not a don't defund the police. Obviously, defund the police. But these are small things that, like, okay, if you do manage to catch trouble for being a shithead cop, you just don't get to do it anymore. But if
part of abolishing the police, I mean, it's not going to be an overnight abolition, but part of abolishing the police is going to be firing a lot of cops and preventing them from ever working in that kind of field ever again.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people need to lose their fucking jobs and their pensions. And it's going to have to be, you're going to have to basically debathify the fucking police.
Yep.
Like, that's it. I mean, flat out, until you get rid of these cops, like, you're not even going to see any demonstrable progress, because even if you cut police budgets, like, they're not going to do this themselves. They're going to go to the wall protecting all of their fucking shithead cops who, no matter how abusive they've been, they're absolutely going to protect those people. And so you've got to fucking make it so they have no choice. You've got to do it. Like, you've got to take the choice out of their control, and you've got to fucking do it. Government has to do it themselves, and they've got to be merciless. They've got to fire a fuckload of cops. Part and parcel of this is going to be firing a lot of shitheads, opening up all of their disciplinary records, getting rid of qualified immunity, and firing them and not replacing them.
Yep.
And please, I haven't engaged with the material enough to really say anything on the topic of, like, what constitutes police abolition. So I'm just saying that from my perspective of what I've seen. But I'm just, like, looking at this. There's some stuff you can do to start with, and, like, I err on the side of being merciless when it comes to firing cops, because they're all bad. If they're not doing it, then they know the ones who are doing it, and the system they don't have the wherewithal to fucking quit and get out of the system. They want to get their pension, and that means looking the other way when bastard cops fucking do illegal shit. So what I'm saying is that there's not a single person in the system who can be like, oh, well, my hands are clean. It's like, just like no one's hands are clean in the military.
Right.
And we talk about this, the whole fucking governing principle of this show. Absolutely no one is fucking hands are free or hands are clean if they're a cop.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
also,
you saw that.
People
in
the military don't make $200,000 a year.
Yeah.
Like, flat out.
You saw those things. You had those issues in the military, and guess what? You got out. And I had those things, and guess what? I'm getting out. And I'm unfortunately, in the military, you can't. It's not as easy as just turn in your badge and gun. But
yeah, that was something that surprised me, that you absolutely can, in most cases, like, walk off the job as a cop and just not come back.
Cops are doing that kind of all over the place. They're resigning and it's. I'm sure some of them are resigning because goddamn soy boy government is not letting them beat up on protesters as much as they want anymore. And which is, hey, fine. However you leave the force, I don't give a fuck. But it's. I know all of this is just absolutely insane, and not in a, like, I mean, I live in St. Louis. I've been around for the Ferguson protests. I've been following a lot of this stuff for a long time, and I think the craziest thing is actually seeing it work now. Like, it finally having the, like, when I say it, I mean, like, the protests, and there's obviously. They're shook. Like, what was it a couple days ago when, like, the New York City police commissioner or something stood in front of a bunch of masked up beefy boys, waving his badge around, saying that people need to respect his badge and shit. And it's just like, God, you people are, like, the most fucking fragile human beings in this world are fucking cops. Like, it's insane to me that as soon as something comes back to them, as soon as they're treated the way that they treat other people, that just turns into just like a blue breakdown. So yeah, fuck them. And I don't want them. I don't want them to have jobs. And we'll figure out policing. We'll figure out something, because who are you going to call when your house gets broken into? Fucking, I have called the cops. It's not useful. They didn't find anything. They don't catch anything. I get an insurance report. Send an insurance adjuster if my house gets broken into. That's who you should call. An insurance adjuster who can take stock of what got stolen, and I can go ahead and get money from my insurance company for it, because the cop's not going to fucking do anything. In St. Louis, you got a 40% chance of getting away with murder. Like, do you think that they're going to catch a fucking burglar? God, no. And I don't care how much money you give them. I don't care how much resources you give them. Cops don't give a fuck. And that's fine. They don't give a fuck, then I don't give a fuck either. And we can not give a fuck together. But, you don't get to be this extrajudicial force that gets to walk around with a gun openly, and people have to, fucking be in deference to you. I hate that shit. It just, the police, the idea of cops has irritated me for years. And, and when I say irritated, again, showing my fucking privilege that it's not an outrage to me. But that's just, watching Ferguson, watching the people that I know get fucked up by cops and National Guard and everything. It's being like, oh, we're just going to do it all over again. I don't know. I'm rambling, but I'm so upset, but also I'm so happy that for every person that says, why are they rioting? Rioting doesn't change anything. You can obviously be like, well, you didn't do anything until people started burning shit down. And if burning shit down is how things have to get done, because you can't, do the things that people, hey, cops are this wild force that's doing whatever the fuck they want. You guys need to curb them. You need to do something. There needs to be something done about housing inequality. There needs to be something done about healthcare and wages and all these things that, like, if you want a capitalist system, this capitalist system that you built, if you want it to stay afloat, you need to be doing more than just scraping, more and more money away from the working class, because they will fucking revolt. And they will start burning shit down, because there are more of us than there are of you. And I don't care how much you think the bikers for Trump are going to show up; they're not. And if they do, they're gonna sit around on their $20,000 Harley Davidsons. They're gonna be fat at one another and wave a bunch of flags. And there might be some punches thrown. There might be a bullet or two exchanged. But for the most part, everybody is getting out there. Like, I see people on Mill Twitter who military people who are saying all cops are bastards. Like, other than just us, Nate, you expect it from us. But the more liberal, people who think that there is something to the military that's still this shining beacon of morality of the American, the country of America, will also say yes, but also all cops are bastards, which is, to be fair, because nobody likes MPs either. So, even the troops hate cops, which is, understandable. So I don't know. It's just, it's frustrating, but it's also just so fantastic to see, like, not only that, more and more people are willing to do it, but like the people that you don't expect, like Webster Groves in St. Louis, which is a fairly affluent neighborhood. It's not like the richest, but it is fairly white. It is fairly affluent. They had a Black Lives Matter protest march. Which I've never seen it before. Fucking insane places like Forks, Washington, in the middle of nowhere, are having Black Lives Matter march, protests and marches. So it's obviously turning into a movement that goes beyond, just Ferguson, and goes beyond, the small protests that we've seen that end up, dissipating after a couple of a week and a half. You see something that's getting bigger and stronger every day, and that it's globalized too. It's I think that might be what they hate the most, is that Black Lives Matter is now a globalist conspiracy. George Soros.
I mean, I've definitely seen the crazies out there fucking saying that it's all George Soros' fault and so on and so forth.
George Soros is sending checks of euros to the people of Belgium to.
Did I ever tell you my story about the MPs in Korea?
I do not remember that one.
My bicycle.
No.
So I had a nice like racing bike that I had shipped to Korea with because when you go to Korea as a single person, in most cases you aren't allowed, like in Area 1 where I was up by the DMZ, north of Uijeongbu, you aren't allowed to live off post unless you're married. So you have to live in like quarters. And so in my case, I was in the BOQ, which was, I had a room. Basically, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was nice compared to what Joe's were living in, like hands down. But it was just a main room that had like a living room seating area and a kitchen, like an alcove kitchen, and then a sliding door to a bedroom with some closets. And then there was also a bathroom that was like a toilet and a stand-up shower and a sink. So very nice to have your own facilities, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't luxurious. I mean, it was just a room. And so my bike didn't really fit. There wasn't like a logical place to store it with all my stuff. I didn't bring very much, but I did bring my bike. Like that got shipped over. So what I was doing was I had a combo lock, and I would lock it in the stairwell of the building, which was indoors. Like there was BOQs were different than your regular barracks in the sense that like you don't have what you call bachelor officers quarters. Was that we didn't have a charge of quarters. There was nobody like you had to check in with to get in and out of the building. You could just go in and out as you wanted, and the doors were unlocked. But I mean, it was on base, so you know what I mean. Like it was on post. Like it wasn't like it was just this random spot. And so other people would do this too. I locked my bike in the stairwell, and I came back from being on a long ass mission thing where like we nonstop in the field doing training from Memorial Day until Labor Day, like the weekend after Labor Day. So I come back to Dongdaecheon to Camp Casey the weekend, the week after Labor Day. And my bike's been stolen. So someone came and cut my, the lock and stole my bike. And there's no CCTV, there's no CQ. So I'm like, fuck, what am I going to do? So I go down to the MP station. I'm like, hey, my bike got stolen. And I'm just looking if I could get like a report of it. I can describe it. I have the serial number. I have like a receipt from where I bought it in Alaska. I just want to get it in like a report so I can give it to my insurance company because, I have renter's insurance and they'll reimburse me for it. They're like, all right, what's the tag number? And I was like, what do you mean? What's the tag number? It's like, why didn't you register? Did you register it with us? And I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm like, well, they're like, well, you're supposed to register your bike, right? I'm like, no. Like that gets briefed to every soldier coming to Korea. I'm like, well, I got here in March and it wasn't briefed. Like I absolutely would have done it, but I didn't know I was supposed to. And they're like, all right, well, you have two choices. You can get your police report, but we're also going to you can notify your command that you disobeyed a direct order because you didn't register your bike.
Jesus Christ.
And I'm like, so what you're basically saying is you're going to get me in legal trouble for reporting the theft of my own bike. I'm like, and I mean, and the level of attitude that the MPs get with you because, them being a cop transcends all rank. Like, don't get me wrong. I had an enormous amount of privilege being a fucking white dude captain, that like Joes and soldiers who aren't white don't have. But it was shocking to me. I was like, damn, these motherfuckers are so aggressive and so condescending and so shitty. And that was the same experience I had getting one of my soldiers out of fucking lockup who had gotten in trouble on base for, getting in a fight with a cab driver and had gotten arrested by the MPs. Like the contempt, like the just aggressiveness, like the way they bully junior soldiers. I was just like, man, y'all are fucking like, you're just cops. Like you're not soldiers. You're just fucking cops. Like, mm-hmm. I despise you and I want nothing to do with you. The only not shitty MPs I've ever worked with was an MP National Guard unit from Puerto Rico because they were just so not about fucking, they didn't want to fuck with people's shit. And so like they just went around in big custom t-shirts that said Policia on them. And basically like everyone knew, they're like, hey, I'm letting you know from like a mile away that I'm a cop. So stop whatever you're doing if you don't want me to have to do my job. And it seemed to work pretty well. That's the only cool MPs I ever worked with. The rest of them sucked.
Dude, the Puerto Rican soldiers, I was the one and only time I ended up in Fort Lewis, we shared barracks with Puerto Rican mechanic unit. And holy shit, man, those guys, like just the coolest soldiers. Like I've never met people who enjoy being soldiers more because it's like, what did they do all day? All day they would go out and they'd fix, Humvees and they'd fix, I don't know what exactly they fixed, but they would spend all day working with their hands fixing shit, and they'd spend all night drinking Puerto Rican rum. And that was it.
Drinking rum and playing music and barbecuing and just like being nice people.
Yeah.
Same with Guamanians. The Guamanian National Guard is the same. Like they're super, super, super cool.
Yeah.
Like everybody like weirdly the units who are constituted of people from like US colonial possessions are actually like really, really chill and just like don't want to be dicks about stuff. But even the MPs were cool. I mean, obviously there are going to be exceptions no matter what, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Whereas like, I mean, so it's just hilarious to me because bringing this back to the previous topic of discussion, you'd think there'd be some affinity between like military people who are, veterans and active duty and the cops. And you will see periodically people being like, well, if only they were as disciplined as my soldiers, which I would argue is not an argument you want to make. Because I did everything I possibly could to be like a Boy Scout when I was in the Army, to include like not doing illegal shit I could have gotten away with, and also reporting things the way you were supposed to when people broke the law, particularly when it was related to shit that to my eyes seemed like abusing civilians or generally treating people more roughly than the situation required. Nobody was punished ever. Nobody was relieved ever. And what I found is that it doesn't matter. You can't be in every place all the time. If soldiers trust you, or if soldiers don't think they have a reason to not trust you, they will just start talking, and you will hear stories, and you'll hear them very matter-of-factly confess to the things they've either done or seen. And you'll realize that the average person is not as well-disciplined as like fucking their commander thinks they are. And that's why, when we talk about for one, the extent to which I don't think there's an affinity between veterans and cops, aside from like the veterans who go on to become cops, the reason is that people have seen the way cops act. They've seen the way that it varies so drastically from, what we're told to expect. And I also think the thing that really grosses, in my opinion, that really weirds out veterans, even if they aren't leftists, is that it's harder in the military to completely get away with shit, like being obviously fucking illegal. And the argument I would make here is it's very challenging for people to go to prison for killing civilians in a war zone. Like, as we've talked about many, many times on this show, the military will do everything it possibly can to exonerate itself, and by extension, the people doing the killing for them. So you have to do something really egregious to get sentenced to prison, but it does happen. Like, I can name, cases off, we've talked a lot about Mike Behenna, that's one. But there have been a bunch of others. There was a guy in my unit, his name was Evan Vila, who went to prison for 10 years for killing a civilian in Iraq. Like, people do get sentenced to prison, as opposed to cops, where it's almost impossible, where the guy who killed Walter Scott after 2 trials was convicted, but like, there was so much blatant evidence of him killing a guy and trying to, plant stuff on him. And it still took 2 fucking trials to convict that guy. So it's almost impossible for cops to feel punishment. Whereas for soldiers, more people do go to prison, even though, as we said, that is not a defense of the military. That's not a defense of the military justice system. It's just to say that it's harder for people to escape unscathed doing blatantly illegal shit in the military than it is being a cop. And then when you look at the stuff like the pension fraud and the disability fraud and overtime fraud and stealing shit, whether it's roughing people up on the streets, doing searches and stealing their shit and selling it, whether it's using civil asset forfeiture to rough people up and steal their shit, it's out in the open, it's completely legal, and everything about the criminal justice system in America says, oh, who cares if it's illegal? Fuck you, we can do what we want. And that, I think, rubs a lot of folks the wrong way, aside from like the really, super hardcore wide-eyed believers. Most folks that I've encountered who are in the military, when they see the differences, are really grossed out by it, because there is much less of a culture of tolerating that kind of shit openly, in the sense that I think we look the other way when it comes to like supply sergeant hooking you up and squaring property away in a less than legal manner. It's a lot different when someone is completely like the guy defrauding the Jordan Goudreau, the Green Beret, defrauding the Army of $60,000 in housing stipends. That kind of shit will get you hemmed up, and it really doesn't matter. I mean, I have never seen a colonel go or above go down for it, but I did see a colonel go down for fraud with regard to CERP funds, Commander's Emergency Relief Program funds in Iraq, where he had done a double proxy divorce on his wife and then tried to marry his interpreter. And he had paid, like he had used the army funds to supply like $250,000 worth of satellite phones to his girlfriend's family. He was a brigade commander and he got hemmed up for it. So, I mean, it does happen. So this is kind of a ramble, but the point I'm trying to make is that there isn't as much of a natural affinity as outsiders might think. But I think the really, really big point of contention that I would make is that for a lot of folks who think that, oh, well, if the cops just behaved like, my soldiers, my idealized notion of my soldiers, then we wouldn't have these problems. I'm going to tell you, I found out a lot of things. I used to kind of believe that, and then I actually got to really know my soldiers after we all got out of the military. And folks, I'm just going to tell you, you can't be everywhere at once. Anywhere you put soldiers, bad things are going to happen. It's the truth. And quite frankly, if you look at what happened in Louisville with David McAtee, I'm telling you, he was shot by the National Guard. They've confirmed that with ballistics. And I'm not patting myself in the back because I don't want to be fucking right about this shit. But the thing that, Francis, you and I said when we talked about this a few weeks ago, when this first started coming up, was anywhere you put troops, it doesn't matter whether or not they're ideologically committed to this or not. Anywhere you put soldiers with live ammo, there is going to be at least one person who's going to pull the trigger. And it's going to happen. All right? And that's what happened. And it's going to happen more if they keep putting troops out on the streets in America. Like, fundamentally, that you will not escape the fact that when you put young soldiers, and they're almost all young, with live ammo in those situations where the cops are being hyper aggressive and trying to find an excuse to kill people, those soldiers are going to shoot too.
Yeah, I know that there's an argument that can be made about the National Guard being better trained and better equipped to deal with some things like this, and the National Guard isn't necessarily put through the grind of racism every day like cops are. Like, cops are just racist every day as a job, work like an occupying force. But a National Guardsman might know the people in the protests. Like, oh, I work at the T-Mobile store with that guy, but at the same time, also, as you said, a lot of the DC National Guard kids that were out there were kids. They were youngins. They were fresh from basic training and advanced individual training. They don't know what they're doing. And then, you put them in, an 18, 19-year-old soldier doesn't really have the toolbox to deal with that. They don't have, and when I say toolbox, like me as, 37 sergeant, 20 years in, if I'm for whatever reason on a line and some cop comes and yells at me to do something, I'm going to tell him that he can take his head, turn it around sideways and shove it right up his fucking ass, because he doesn't command me. I don't listen to him. I don't have to do a goddamn thing that he says. But a lot of other people, younger soldiers aren't going to have that. They're not going to know that. They're going to say, they're just going to be confused. And when you have confusion and you have a lot of yelling and screaming and hyperactive shit going on, even if the guy had a gun and was shooting at the cops were already shooting in his direction with pepper balls and dispersing the protesters with all these things. Like, if I was shooting, reverse those roles. If I had pepper balls and was shooting at cops, it would absolutely gun me the fuck down, like, without a heartbeat. So what the fuck are you even doing? Like, there is no situation that any of this would have worked out. And yeah, like you said, Nate, absolutely. If you take this situation and you shake it up hard enough, and you're going to have this problem. Somebody's going to pull a trigger. And you know what? For as much as we want to sit and believe that, our boys and girls in green of the National Guard and all these people are just, they're just weekend warriors, man. They just want to, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, make a little extra money, do some sandbagging during some flooding and calling it a day. Guarantee you that there's going to be at least probably maybe 4 to 10% that are going to be highly racist and looking forward to shooting somebody. And they're going to use that, because guess what? Whichever National Guardsman shot him, is not going to jail. They're not going to be hemmed up. There's going to be an inquiry. There's going to be that's all it ever is. It's always
they're going to do a 15-6 and they're going to clear them.
Right,
that's how it works.
When they used in DC, when they used the Lakota helicopter with a fucking medical symbol on it, which is literally a war crime. They used it to do crowd dispersal. That is war crime. I don't care I don't give a fuck what here in America what you can and can't get away with. That's a war crime. You don't fucking do that. And everybody's washing their hands of it. Oh, I didn't say that they do it. I didn't say they could do it. I said we needed them, but I didn't say that we needed them to do that. Oh, they just made a command decision. You see how everybody starts kicking that shit down the road until it's going to fall into the pilot. But even the pilot's going to be protected. The pilots, those pilots aren't going to, we need helicopter pilots. Not going to, just be like, well, you fucked up, so you're out of the Army now. No more helicopter flying for you, young man. That's just not going to happen. And there's literally nothing that, you can do about it. Who are you going to fucking call? The cops? Like I think that's the most egregious part of all of this. So, I'm sorry. The National Guard's not here to save us. The cops aren't here to save us. The only people that are going to save you is you, and judging by the Minneapolis photos of the projectiles lobbed at them, the half-eaten apple in your hand, that's going to bring about the fully automated gay space communism that we've all been looking forward to.
But also the thing I would want to say, I mean, to keep it kind of serious, is just look at the story of what happened with Breonna Taylor. Look at the story and the ways in which the cops are lying to you constantly. Look at the ways in which you're seeing city governments having to correct themselves because they've been putting out obvious lies that the cops have put there intentionally. That's the point, right? You can't trust the cops. And now look at this story where a woman was murdered in her bed because the cops decided that whatever bullshit they thought about whatever, involvement they thought her boyfriend might have with drugs, which apparently, from what I can tell, is none, there was no penalty for them busting in the middle of the night and murdering her. And the more you dig into that story, the more insanely crooked these cops look. And I actually would argue that maybe that's the wrong way of looking at it. We have a tendency to look at things and say, wow, these are really crooked cops. I can't believe the cops are so corrupt. And the point I'm trying to make is that that's all of them. That is all of them. Every cop is complicit, either doing it or looking the other way. There are no good cops. Your uncle, your brother, your dad, I'm sorry. They were complicit, or they were the bad ones doing it. And the fact of the matter is, either acknowledge that and, be realistic about the threat you're facing, or pretend this is all some fucking ideological debate that you can just take you take a detached, oblique viewpoint of, and just be honest about the fact that you don't give a shit. Flat out. Like, either you care and you engage with the problem as it exists in the world, or you are a spectator for a thing that is just like an ideological exercise, like an Oxford Union debate about whether or not black people deserve to live. Now, I'm telling you, it is that serious. And you have to pick a side, as we said 2 weeks ago. And what I'm trying to tell you is, if you look at this case with Breonna Taylor, if you look at the case with David McAtee, if you look at all of these fucking cases that are piling up left and right, you look at the number of young men who suddenly surprisingly committing suicide by hanging themselves in public places. Oh, they're all black for some reason. All this stuff you're seeing, everything out there, all the apparatuses of the state, the police, their information systems, your local government, their information systems, your state government, your national government, they're all telling you, don't believe your eyes. This isn't true. Actually, there's just been a few slip-ups here and there, but all cops are basically good. And what I'm telling you is, all they do is lie. All they do is brutalize people, and they're completely unaccountable. And we are looking at a system that we have to dismantle. Not reform, not correct, not shift in a different direction. Utterly and completely dismantle it.
All cops know is twerking, be bisexual, eat donut, and lie. That's it.
Yeah. Emphasis on the lie part. But anyway, on a slightly lighter note, we watched the Bong Joon-ho movie, The Host, from 2006 and decided to review it. So that's available on the Patreon this week. for $3 a month. You also get access to all of our movie reviews at that price tier. So I'm going to play about 10 minutes of our review of that film. It wasn't quite Is It Fascist, but it's along similar lines. And if it sounds interesting to you, you can definitely check it out in the show notes. There's a link to the Patreon.
It discusses, as you said, not only the politics of the time in which South Koreans love to protest. They know not to trust their government, and the student activists will get out. They just, it's like the timeline in it. Like, I know movie timelines are always kind of wonky, but it's like the timeline was we're going to release this Agent Yellow, and all the kids, all the the university students are like, I've already got a bunch of flags and a bunch of empty bottles and gasoline, so we're ready to go. That practiced hand of making Molotov, like that dude came ready for war. But of course he was going to war against the monster, but also at some point in time, he was also flinging Molotov cocktails. Like that's so wild to me that he is, that you go from like doing literal wanton destruction like that into, okay, well now it's time to go be a salaryman somewhere. And there's no, there's nothing that stops you from doing that. But personally, I like the family dynamic. I like it when you've got like at the funeral, at the memorial service, when the whole family gets together and there's like a lot of screaming and yelling and breakdowns happening from all the brothers, the sisters, the dad, they're all screaming and yelling at each other and crying at the same time. And you can tell, like, okay, eventually this is going to be like a whole, and then the family kind of gets back together and learns, but they don't at the same time. Like at one point, the brother and sister escape together, but they just separate. Like, and don't even talk about it. They're not like, you go that way, I'll go this way, and we're gonna, keep things. We're gonna make it harder for them to catch us. He's just like, I don't know. We just, after the sewers, we went in two different directions, and we didn't mention it. But there is still like they're texting each other when the brother finds the location of where the cell phone signal came from. He texts it to the sister. She manages to get it. So there is certainly a connection, but at the end, where the brother and sister, you don't see them. You just see, the little boy and the dad, the young blonde guy. You're gonna be having to fix the names for me, but that's all you see at the end. Is kind of how it started. It started with him and his father, and kind of fighting, but obviously a lot of love for his daughter. And it kind of ends the same way. It's just the two of them. How it's not necessarily how it's always been, but how it's meant to be. So I don't know. It's, again, in an American movie, they'd all be like, oh, I retired from archery. And the brother would be like, I decided salaryman thing wasn't my thing. We're all going to run the food stand together like a big happy family. But that's not what happens. It's the daughter is dead. The family is still scattered for all we know. But it's okay because everybody is content with that. And I think that's more of, for me, that's more of the enjoyment of this movie is seeing what it does with the family dynamic and the human condition. And again, because it's a Korean movie, it's not an American movie. It's different than what I expected. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with not the perfect, ribbon tied happy ending, which is good. I'm happy to have that because, one, that's not how life goes, but two, it takes a risk. I feel like, and I'm sure that this will come out and people will give me movie recommendations of fucked up movies to watch that have sad endings, but that's not what I'm not looking for. Like, your weird Criterion collection, come and see or whatever. What I'm looking for is like a mainstream movie, like make a Transformers movie, but like where it doesn't end happy. I guess Optimus Prime dies at some point. I don't know. I haven't actually watched Transformers movies, but what I'm talking about, like something that is more of a dynamic of contentedness, not necessarily the delirious happiness that is the ending of an American movie.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like there are some things in here where stuff kind of gets glossed over for the purpose of advancing the plot. But some of the things that I appreciated about this film was that a lot of stuff will be throwaway in American movies like this. And very little in this film is throwaway. I mean, really, I kept recalling, like, obviously, okay, the plot point with archery, you know what I'm saying? With Namju, the sister. That starts in the very beginning and it continues throughout. And so you know it's going to play a role, but like I appreciate that they created some degree of backstory to it. If you remember correctly, the very first scene with Kangdu is him asleep at the food stall, and the two little boys who are the homeless beggars try to steal food from him and then kind of get caught and they run away. So that those two, Seijin and Seiju, like you see them later. Like they come back, they play a significant role in the film. The stupidity with the sewer system and them just like not really their dad thinking that he's getting a leg up by paying these gangsters, and like what they give them is actually shit. Like, and that winds up slowing down their progress. They could have found it a lot sooner if they had just gone the route they originally had talked about talking to the telecom company, but of course the police wouldn't do that. The dad keeps trying to bribe the police and bribe everybody, and like, because that's how things used to work in Korea. And he's just like, he hasn't adapted to the times, stuff like that. I found that it's still a monster movie with like monster movie plot devices, but there was an attention to detail that really made it seem like a much more realized film, and thus a lot less just sort of, I don't know, there's less of the sense of things just happen with no antecedents whatsoever, the way that they would in a Transformers movie. You know what I'm saying? Or in like a Marvel movie.
I kind of want to get you to watch King Kong Skull Island, because there are so many subplots that are happening in it. It's not just a giant monkey movie where you feel sorry for the monkey. There's Samuel L. Jackson plays a Vietnam War colonel, and like the Vietnam War is winding down, and his helicopter unit is being sent home, and he's just like, he's got this like, I've been fighting this war and I have absolutely nothing to show for it. We didn't win Vietnam. We didn't win any of this nonsense. I don't know what the point is. So like his entire plot point is him chasing some kind of win, and never really getting it. But there is like a lot of desperation to that. And that's what I love. Like King Kong Skull Island won me over simply because of that, because it had a Vietnam War era soldier chasing something so that he can feel that his time, his life was not wasted. Which is, this podcast for me. Hey, maybe I spent 2 years, deployed overseas. How not to waste that? Why don't we turn that frown upside down and go anti-war and talk about those experiences? So, I think if you haven't watched Skull Island, I think that you would really like it. Also because it's a fun monster movie. Also, John C. Reilly is really funny in it. So, he's a good comedic relief without being. I don't know. He's not a clown, he's John C. Reilly. So he's just like on his own. He's just funny, like his delivery. So he's like a good addition to the movie, but doesn't take away from the gravitas of the movie itself. So, and it's got John Goodman. It's got a lot of good people in it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing for me watching this film was I appreciated how like sucked into the world you get. And I also appreciate the fact that the film never really tries to hide the fact that Kangdu is a big oaf, but he's right, and he loves his daughter, and you can identify with him in that regard. Like you can identify with the fact that he's unwilling to take no for an answer if it means he can save his daughter. And obviously in the end, she doesn't wind up surviving, but he's not going to give up. And so in a way, I felt like it's a movie about a mutant fish that terrorizes Seoul. But there's way more, I don't know, like realistic motivations for characters, if that makes sense. And that to me made it's cool. It's a weird juxtaposition to have a film that's obviously completely fantastic. It's all, it's a horror film in a way, but it's also a film about a dysfunctional family. And the dysfunctional family parts seem natural in context. And that's the thing that I think I appreciate the most about it. Like, it's just, those were all well done and believable. And as such, it made you feel invested in the characters more so than you would if it was, Tony Stark's fucking $1 billion space plane, whatever.
Right. Yeah, and that is it's characters that you can see yourself in. Like every character has a flaw that you can find, like if not in yourself, then you can just understand it. You can understand the despondent, university graduate who can't find a job and is just drunk and angry. You can understand the sister who is hesitant, who is incredibly good at what she does, and could be a gold medal winner, but she holds herself back. You understand the dad who's just trying to look out for the best of his kids, and you understand the blonde guy for wanting. He's doing what he can to find his daughter. Like that's his one thing, and he's single-minded. Which like there's plenty of American movies that are like that. The daughter is gone or taken, kidnapped or whatever, and you send Liam. But you send Liam Neeson after it in an American movie. Here you just oafishly in sweatpants and a stained shirt, plodding along next to the river, screaming your daughter's name, and then jumping in the water to go swim after a fish monster because you have no idea what to do next. There is no answer to it. All right, everybody. Thank you for being with us. As Nate said, you can support the show at patreon.com/hellofawaitodie. We also have the website hellofawaitodie.com, which has writings, which has a store, has all kinds of good stuff. We're always adding stuff to the store, so check that out. And a lot of the things that you buy, the proceeds end up going to charity. So you can buy things in the evil capitalist grinder, but understand that it's going to, go to help other people. Other than that, though, you can follow me at Army Strength, follow Nate at In These Deserts, follow the podcast at Hell of a Way. Get us on YouTube. We're almost to 1,000 people on YouTube. Very exciting. I guess I should start being on YouTube more. And talking to people more on YouTube. So it's exciting. We're getting stronger. We're doing a lot more. We got a whole summer of being locked down because of COVID. So what else is there to do but to create content? So hopefully we're going to be doing a lot more of that. So until next week, Nate, talk to you later.
Yep. Have a good one.